Trying to eliminate every possible toxic exposure is not a waste of money or effort. In fact, it is an investment in the long-term health and stability of both people and the environment. Preventing exposure to toxins saves future costs in medical treatment, environmental cleanup, and loss of productivity. The tragedy in Oroya, Peru, as shown in The House of Lead, A Story of Greed, is a clear example of what happens when industries fail to take prevention seriously. The community suffered immensely because nonprofit was placed above safety. If precautions had been taken early on, the suffering of so many families, especially children, could have been avoided. With that in mind, the idea that industry costs should justify abandoning a precautionary approach makes little moral or practical sense. Money should never outweigh human health or life. The precautionary principle exists to prevent irreversible harm before it occurs, especially when the full extent of danger isn't yet known. In La Oroya, the smelter continued to operate even when clear evidence of lead poisoning emerged, all because shutting down or modernizing the plant was considered too expensive. This shows why waiting for conclusive proof before taking action allows unnecessary harm to continue, and why precaution must always come first. Accepting risks, therefore, should only happen when strong, credible scientific evidence demonstrates that exposure levels are truly safe. Risks become acceptable in the long-term studies consistently show that they fall well below harmful thresholds, and when protective systems are in place to keep them that way. In the case of La Oroya, there was overwhelming evidence that contamination levels were dangerously high, meaning that the risks were anything but acceptable. Allowing exposure in such conditions is not a calculated risk, it's negligence. If I or a loved one were one in a million to suffer irreversible neurological damage because of a toxin like lead, I would feel devastated and angry. That's one thing to talk about an acceptable risk and statistics, but it's another to experience it personally. For the families affected, that 1 in a million chance means a lifetime of suffering that could have been prevented. The idea that someone could lose their health or future because a known toxin was ignored or poorly regulated is deeply unfair and hard to accept. Understanding why toxins like lead are so dangerous also requires looking at how they behave in the body. Lead bioaccumulates, meaning it builds up in living organisms over time because the body cannot easily get rid of it. Even small, repeated exposures can lead to toxic levels, especially in children whose bodies are still developing. This gradual buildup explains why lead poisoning can happen slowly without obvious signs at first, until it becomes severe. According to this danger is the persistence of lead in the environment. A persistent toxin doesn't easily break down, so it can remain in soil, air, or water for decades. Lead is highly persistent, and because of this, it continues to harm ecosystems and human populations long after the original source stops operating. Its persistence means that contamination from the past continues to poison future generations, a lasting legacy of industrial carelessness that is difficult to undo. Reflecting on this issue also reminds me of an article I was reading about water intoxication, which was surprising because it showed that even something as harmless as water can become dangerous in excess. I wasn't fully aware that drinking too much water too quickly could cause harm, but it emphasizes an important point. Toxicity is about balance. Whether it's water or lead, too much of anything can be deadly. This helped me understand that safety is not only about avoiding toxins, but also about maintaining the right levels of exposure and awareness. After watching The House of Lead, A Story of Greed, I was both heartbroken and angry. Seeing how the people of La Oroya suffered due to the greed of an industry that valued profit over life was hard to process. Children with lead poisoning, families forced to live in toxic conditions, and a government that looked the other way. These are things no community should ever experience. The video was a powerful reminder that environmental issues aren't just about science, they're also about human lives. It left me convinced that protecting people from toxic exposure isn't just a good policy, it's a moral responsibility.